I think that's what this is talking about. It's a separation of your spirit from your ego. It's simply saying, look, the wholeness of your spirit has nothing to do with you, whether you're happy or you're sad, whether your ego is up or whether it's down, you had a good day, bad day. The wholeness of your spirit is eternal. It's not affected by, if you don't allow it to be affected by those things, it will not be affected by those things. And it's obviously a constant struggle. It's not like you just all of a sudden become a robot and you don't feel these things. Of course you feel these things. But I think that's the practice and the discipline that we're working on, is trying to figure out ways to say that's going to happen. It's happened before and it'll happen again. I remember this great, I read this article one time about this dude that went into the Amazon with this native, he was an anthropologist, and he went in with some Amazonian, indigenous Amazonians who lived, the deep jungle, right? And he went with them, and they had these things where like they didn't believe in ownership of material. So like they'd come up to you and like, hey, I'd like your watch, and you kind of have to give it to them because it's just there wasn't any ownership. I guess that was just their culture. But what's really interesting, that's the point, is that they were one day they were out and they were on a hunting party, and they'd been out for like a day or two, and he didn't really speak the language well, but he kind of knew that there was something up. So he kind of went to the leader and he said, what's going on? The leader said, well, we're lost. He said, what do you mean you're lost? He said, we're lost. We don't know where we are. And he says, well, what happens if we can't find our way out of here? The leader was like, well, then we'll die. Like, very matter of fact, like that's just the way it was. And you have to accept it. If you're lost, you keep going until you're found or you die. And I was like, wow, that was always struck me as very profound, that you could accept that was just the reality of your life. Instead of saying, oh, what, freaking out, losing your mind. It's like they had gone through all the levels of grief without ever having to go through the levels of grief, if that makes sense. They had accepted, and you talked about it on our last show last week, about this idea of a daily death to self, that we die to ourselves, and we accept our death. It's in front of us. It's going to happen. And when we could do that, that's when we're going to find peace in our life.
Yeah, I feel like kind of connected to this one. We were talking about detachment as well, and it was like something about like giving, like not letting your desires have a hold on you, like letting go of your desires.
Well, that's Buddhism. That's Buddhism for sure. Buddhism talks about the idea of the Eightfold Path and the Four Noble Truths. That's what it means.
But, there's something that comes up that gnaws at you, like something comes up in your life. You just can't let that thought go. And I'm wondering if it's like that. I mean, we're on the parallel track with detachment. Like, you just gotta, how do you just let that thought that's gnawing at you just go away, float down the rivers? You like to say.
I think that's the discipline. I think that's the discipline of saying, if you're already